welcome to A Taste of Torah. I'm Rabbi Gabi Rui, and our Torah portion this week is Parashat Vayeira. In Pirkei Avot, or the Ethics of the Fathers, we learn that our forefather Abraham endured 10 difficult tests or trials throughout his life, the last two of which are in this week's portion. They involve Abraham's two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, and are disturbing and gut-wrenching stories of unimaginable tribulation. First, we learn that Sarah is upset when she sees her son Isaac playing with his half-brother by the slave Hagar. We don't really know what Sarah found so objectionable, but she demands that her husband cast out Hagar and her son. Abraham is greatly distressed by this, as any father would be. Casting out his son Ishmael and the boy's mother into the desert will likely mean death for them both. Abraham takes the issue to God, hoping to hear a less painful solution. But instead, God tells him to do as Sarah says. And so, without protest or resistance, Abraham gets up early the next morning to complete this task. He gets Hagar some water and a loaf of bread and sends her and his son away. Not surprisingly, with their water eventually gone and enduring the pounding heat of the desert sun, Ishmael comes very close to dying. It's only when an angel of God hears their cries that Ishmael and Hagar are saved. The second test is even more unthinkable. God instructs Abraham to take his son Isaac to the land of Moriah and offer him up there as a burnt sacrifice. How is a parent supposed to respond to the demand that they execute their child? From what we know about the relationship between Abraham and God, we would expect him to question God at the very least, and more likely to protest, to resist. But all the text tells us is that Abraham got up early the next morning and set out to fulfill this task. Like his half-brother, Isaac came very close to dying that day. He was bound on the altar, and his father had knife in hand, ready to slit his throat. Thankfully, an angel of God intercedes and instructs Abraham to sacrifice a ram instead. What are we to learn from these disconcerting stories? How do we hear the binding of Isaac or the banishment of Ishmael and not recoil in horror? Is it possible that Abraham failed these last two great tests? I think it is, based on what we learn from the Torah itself. Abraham comes away from these trials with every one of his significant relationships broken. Take Isaac. While father and son journey up the mountain in the land of Moriah together, they come down the mountain separately. And we have no indication that father and son ever spoke again. A similar rupture occurs with his son Ishmael. After Abraham banishes Ishmael and his mother, they never speak again. And immediately after these trials, we learn that Sarah, Abraham's wife, dies. Several midrashim from the rabbinic era say that Sarah died of a broken heart upon hearing of what her son Isaac endured at the hands of her husband. His son Ishmael, his son Isaac, his wife Sarah, all three of these relationships are ruptured beyond repair as a result of Abraham's response to these tests. But it's not just his worldly relationships that are ruptured. After these events, God will never speak directly to Abraham again. The close and intimate relationship that God and Abraham shared is forever over. So maybe Abraham was not supposed to just go along with God's mandates. Maybe he was supposed to resist and protest these arbitrary and cruel decrees. We can learn much from our father Abraham, from his successes and from his failures. Shabbat Shalom. Be sure to check out the site rabgabi.com for teachings and upcoming classes.